think we've got a breath of fresh air that's coming to Georgia. Georgia is in crisis because neighborhoods across the state are struggling. And they're struggling because values are down and people are trying to stay in their homes. And importantly, we're trying to get people to move back into homes. And if we want to stabilize neighborhoods, and they're very high foreclosure neighborhoods, but foreclosure is literally gone throughout the metro area and spreading throughout the state, we've got to make sure that people pay taxes based on what their properties are worth. We had done research twice last year looking at sales values, what happened in the market during the first half of the year, and again, we updated it in the second half of the year. And it was astounding to see what was going on in the real market and what was going on in terms of tax assessments. Senator Rogers got to the heart of it. If you are living in a high foreclosure neighborhood, as of last year, you had the potential for overpayment of taxes of $100, $125 a month. What we did see was some action by the tax assessors, frankly, because of a bill passed here at the General Assembly to require that foreclosure sales be one of the variables. And so we saw values come down somewhat, but they still are far from the market. And what you saw across the metro area is that maybe a county might lower 7% of the parcels or lower 10% of the parcels, but we know that this is a widespread phenomenon. In areas near here, right across from Turner Field, values are down 80% from what the assessors had shown. In Fulton County, that the assessors actually did lower this past year values in 30310, the greatest we saw, by 24%, but values should have gone down 79%. And these were for homes that sold. These are for homes that sold from a willing buyer to a willing seller. They were not courthouse steps. They were through a realtor, so through an open market. So you have tax assessors that have information based on real sales data, but are coming up with valuations that are different than the market. Senator's solution is so simple that it's wonderful. The market is for what a home sells for between a willing buyer and a willing seller. That's what we need to set the taxes for. Comparisons need to be done. Not all homes sell in 1 year, but at a minimum, we can fix that and use that as a basis. I think in getting this right will help see reinvestment in neighborhoods that are currently declining in value. If we start to see the market come back because people are willing to move in, they can afford the houses, or someone who's struggling to hold on can have their taxes lowered to what they should be paying, they aren't going to be foreclosed. We'll actually see property appreciation. And we'll see some of the revenue issues that are affecting our state and our local governments go away sooner than they would otherwise. We have to address this issue this year, and I really appreciate your timely response. We've coordinated with other nonprofits across the country, and we hear anecdotally we have similar concerns, but I am not aware of one state legislature that is addressing the issue. And Georgia started to do it last year and is coming up with really, I think, a best-in-the-nation solution this year. And we just have to make it happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, questions?
Have you studied what effect these changes might have on local governments who are relying very heavily on property taxes, school boards?
Well, they'll have to be,
county governments?
yeah, they'll have to be honest in taxation. They'll have to, if they want more revenue, they'll have to, of course, change the millage rate. But that is a far preferable situation than to charge a taxpayer for a tax they don't owe. When you change the millage rate, it affects everybody, which means everybody in the county or everybody in the jurisdiction has to invest into whatever government services they want. When you have a tax scheme that the taxpayers are currently involved in now, where some person's paying, in some cases, 3 or 4 times more than what they actually owe on value, it's simply not fair to that taxpayer. So changing millage rates is, whether you want to consider that fair or not, it is equally applied to everybody. When you have assessed values that are completely out of whack, particularly in your poor neighborhoods, those are the people who oftentimes don't understand the property tax system, don't have access to having someone help them go through the appeal process. Those are the people that are really getting the bad end of this deal. The people that live in the very wealthy neighborhoods who understand this, can hire an attorney to go appeal, I mean, they're going to be okay. So what my message to the local government is as it has always been, in the property tax system, your right is to lower and raise the millage rate as necessary to affect the revenue you need. But you cannot have an assessed value situation that is so far out of whack that people are paying 300% and 400% more than they ought to pay.
In terms of the free market that you said would set the price, what if someone buys a home by owner, and it might be a cousin, and, you know, they buy it for just $40,000 because half of it is a gift? I mean, that kind of scheme that could happen.
Those are not allowed. These are all arm's length transactions. Yeah. Have to be the willing buyer, willing seller in an open market.
You said that you thought most of these provisions would not be controversial. I assume that the unanimous decision, the requirement for unanimous decision is one of those things you think will probably engender some controversy?
It may. I haven't heard anything yet to suggest that it will, but I just think if you're going to raise someone's assessed value, that the three people, the three citizens that are listening to the case ought to be in agreement as opposed to just 2 out of 3.
Where else do you expect some pushback on the bill?
Well, I think year-long appeals is going to be a pushback. I think you're going to have local government officials that recognize that this is going to require more work on their behalf. But when you see over-taxation by the hundreds of millions of dollars, I think that it's not too much to ask the local elected officials to come up with a system that allows someone to appeal. And one of the things we've talked about, if you go past a certain date and you win your appeal, then you would just receive a credit on your next tax bill. We don't want it to be an open-ended process that lasts forever. But if the value is wrong, the value is wrong, and someone ought to have their day in court.
I wonder if you can walk us through the process, what will be allowed to be used in setting values versus what has been allowed in the past. I'm not sure I'm clear on what changes, if any, there are there.
There are no real changes, though. We are clarifying the language that we put in, that we passed, I believe, in Senate Bill 55 last year. So all the criteria that determines the assessed value will stay the same. Last year, we put that the assessor may consider the bank sales and the foreclosures and the short sales and all that. This year, we're saying they shall consider, so they have to at least consider that in the process. But for the sale that happens in a single year, this is where we think that we're really going to make a lot of improvement. You buy a house this year, free and open market, arm's length transaction, that's got to be the maximum assessed value for your next tax bill.
For your next tax bill and your next tax bill only?
Yes, I mean, it can change after that.
It can't be retroactive, though?
It can't be retroactive, but if you buy it in 2000, let's say you buy it in 2010, on your next tax bill, you would see that be the maximum assessed value. And that, to me, clears up a lot of the problem, and particularly what Mr. O'Callahan's talking about. If I'm someone that wants to move back into a neighborhood across the street from Turner Field, and I know I can buy that house open market for $50,000, that I know that I can count on next year my tax bill is going to be based on $50,000. And that way, the people buying the house can get some predictability in what type of taxes they're going to pay. And it just seems to be fair and easy and take out a lot of the human error that's contained in the current system.